Well, welcome back to my channel. I've managed to sell my Ferrari. The 360 was a great car, but I was able to find a very good home for it in Tennessee. Shipped it off about a month ago. The new owner seems to be enjoying it. Haven't heard too much from him, but just the right amount to know that the car made it there safely and that it's been driven about 500 miles since. So happy to know it's gone to a good home, and I've decided to go back to my first love, which is the E46 BMWs. So I've decided to replace my other car with not one, but actually two E46 BMWs. The story of this was I actually bought the black car first. It's a 330i. It's in pretty decent shape. Neither of them are perfect, but this one I wanted to use as a base for a E46 M3 sedan build, which of course, if you follow these cars at all, you know that that does not exist in the real world. There's a few that have been built, but I wanted to add to that and build my own. So I had a car picked out. It was a convertible out of Georgia. I had made a deal on the car on Marketplace. I was ready to buy a plane ticket, and the seller, I think, got cold feet. Started acting a little strange, told me to hold off, that there was a family emergency, blah, blah, blah. Hopefully that's not the actual case, but if it is, then my apologies for that comment. But anyway, he kind of dropped off, and I decided to look a little more locally. Was able to find this car in Austin, Texas. Went there after work one night and drove it home. It was priced very aggressively, so I assumed the car would be in terrible shape, which would be perfect for a donor. It turns out it's actually pretty nice. It's got some nice mods, which I'll go over shortly. So the car has some OZ Challenge wheels. It's got a Dynan exhaust, Dynan intake. It looks like it had a really good owner or a series of owners in the past. Car's in pretty decent cosmetic shape. It has a few bumps and bruises, but nothing too alarming. The car has 179,000 miles on it, so it's definitely a higher mileage car. This one actually has 190,000, which is unfathomable to me 10 years ago, but these cars are really just as solid as they are when they were new. I mean, they drive great, they feel great. In all seriousness, they feel tighter than the Ferrari ever did. So when I got this car home, I decided to go through it. I'm not sure I'm having the heart to take it apart and use it as a donor. It's just a little too nice for that, especially being a coupe. Ideally, I'd like a convertible to do that with. So for the time being, I've decided to leave both cars as is and just improve them as I go. Both of them, like I said, are in decent shape, but they both have a lot of things that could be fixed. There's a few mods on this one I don't really care for, like the black grills. It's got all the LED lights inside. A few other things that are probably going to be removed and put back to glory. Both cars are in dire need of a good polish, as you can tell. This is pretty bad. Most likely sit outside or maybe next to a sprinkler system or something. That's easy enough to correct. Obviously it'll take probably 10 hours to do so, but it'll come back nicely. Had a couple of dings on it when I bought it, which I had PDR'd. So yeah, these are the two cars. And for the time being, I think I'm gonna actually make each of them a little bit better than they already are and use them as projects while I try to decide what to replace the Ferrari with in the future. So my possible Ferrari replacements, I'm leaning towards an R8 or possibly an Aston Martin V8 Vantage. Both cars would be amazing. Right now, of course, is not really the time to be buying cars like that. The rates are high. The shortage supply has driven prices up to just unreasonable amounts, in my opinion. So I'm going to play with these two for a while and see what happens to the market. All right, this is the inside of the jet black car. Both are 04s. This one had the interior color that I always would have liked to have had in my previous E46s. Biggest issue is right there. It's an SMG transmission, which is commonly referred to actually as an SSG transmission in these cars. It's very rare. This is the first one I've actually ever seen in my life in person. I've heard about them, but never experienced them. If you think they might be okay, it's all right. I'm probably gonna replace it. I'm probably gonna do a 5-speed, which I actually have right here for the car. This is ZF transmission out of another 330i. Technically, this car should have a 6-speed, but we're gonna use the 5-speed and carry on. But yeah, inside of the car is extremely nice. I couldn't be happier with what I paid for it. The car drives tight, looks great. Just needs little cosmetic stuff here and there, and of course the transmission needs to be swapped. If you've never seen one of these before, it's pretty interesting. It actually looks like a ZHP knob. You can control it. You can control it from the wheel. This wheel unfortunately doesn't work. The reason being is it's out of a E46 M3 I used to own. And I thought the paddles would work, everything plugged in, but turns out they don't because there's a resistor in the SSG ones. I'm assuming you could make these paddles work if you wanted to figure out the resistor value and wire it in. But if I'm gonna swap this car, there's no reason to mess around with that. I'll just control it either manually via the shift knob or let it work in automatic mode for the time being. Back seat of the car is equally nice. It's got a window regulator that's out on the driver's side, but no big deal there, just typical E46 stuff that needs to be addressed. The car could use a little bit of paint work on the rear bumper. The sun is eating it a little bit, but we'll address that in due time. Jumping over to the M3, these seats were not in the car when I bought it. I had these left over from a previous M3 that I used. They never sold, and I'm happy they didn't because they were able to find a great home here. They actually are power. They use E30 switches, which is pretty cool. This car, unfortunately, is also SMG transmission. Not certain if I'm gonna keep it or swap it, but for the time being, I'm gonna use it as long as the clutch doesn't slip or anything major happens. Both cars have aftermarket head units, which is pretty cool. They work with Bluetooth. This car actually came with all the original literature, even with the original window sticker, which I've never had with one of my E46s. So yeah, the more I looked at this car, the overall shape that it's in, it's just too nice to be used as a donor. So we'll either table that project for now, or if we do it in the future, we'll find a different one to use. Maybe a beat up convertible. That would be ideal. This is under the hood of the 330. Everything's in pretty decent shape. No record of the cooling systems. We'll probably address that here shortly. Everything on a non-M is considerably cheaper than on the M, but that's just the way it is, unfortunately. Car pulls great, has lots of power. So I think other than the little maintenance stuff, we might just leave this one as is. This one though, we're definitely not leaving as is. It has a dine-in intake, which I've found out is actually pretty desirable. I'm personally gonna be pulling it off shortly. Gonna do a CSL style airbox. Gonna use the map sensor, gonna use the CSL firmware. So everything should be exactly as a CSL should be, other than it won't have the intake flap. I've never had the intake flap on any of my E46s. It's up to you and the person who owns the car if they want to use it or not. In my opinion, it's not needed, but you know, everybody has their own opinion. One other thing on this car that needs immediate attention is the suspension. Not just because it's ridiculously high, but it has a lot of noise coming out of the passenger side. I think the control arms are gone. Pretty common with these, especially with these mileage, or this mileage. So I'm gonna replace the control arms. Gonna go ahead and put a set of coilovers in the car just to get it to the height I want. And then we'll see how it drives. And unless I find something that deems this car unrepairable, like a completely torn subframe or something else making all this noise, it'll continue to live on. But if we find anything major like that where the car is not worth fixing, well, have a good home for it. So yeah, there's a tour of two of my cars I bought to replace my Ferrari in the interim. Hopefully you'll want to continue to follow along as I improve both of these. And if not, then I hope you enjoyed my previous videos. And hopefully we'll see you around with the next one. As always, I appreciate you watching.